Let me start with a simple question. In a world like Game of Thrones, a world built on cruelty and deception, how does an ordinary man survive without becoming cruel himself? Most characters in Westeros rely on one of three things: pedigree, strength, or intelligence. Davos Seaworth has none of these. He's not noble, not particularly intelligent by the standards of schemers like Tyrion or Littlefinger, and not physically imposing. And yet, he survives. More than that, he managed to keep his humanity almost intact. This video is not about Davos as a moral hero. It is about something more uncomfortable, yet more useful. This is a story about integrity, not as a virtue, but as a strategy. Before we talk about Davos' principles, we need to understand where he comes from. To do this, we need to look at Davos not as a knight or advisor, but as an outsider shaped by scarcity. Davos Seaworth does not begin his life in service to power. He begins in Flea Bottom, the poorest district of King's Landing. He was a smuggler, someone who survived by understanding scarcity, risk-taking, and incentives. When Storm's End is under siege during Robert's Rebellion, Davos does not sail there because he believes in Stannis Baratheon's cause. He sails there because a starving castle creates opportunity for someone willing to take the risk. Smuggling onions and salted fish through a naval blockade is a calculated gamble, not a moral act. But that gamble changes his life. Stannis rewards Davos with knighthood. He also punishes him by cutting off the first joint of each finger for his past crimes. Davos accepts both without protest. He did not argue. He did not bargain. He just accepted consequences deemed fair. In that moment, Davos becomes permanently positioned between two worlds. He is no longer a common criminal, but never fully an aristocrat. He is bound to command not by blood or ideology, but by authority that was granted, not inherited. That position, outsider with access, is where his entire strategy begins. With Davos' position established, we can now examine what actually makes him usable to power. Predictability is an underrated but decisive political asset. What distinguishes Davos is not that he is always right, it is that he is predictable. In a political environment dominated by manipulation, predictability becomes a rare asset. Davos speaks plainly. He refused to maneuver behind his king's back. When Stannis begins to rely on Melisandre's prophecies, Davos does not attempt to undermine her through intrigue. He argues openly. He insists that wars are decided by resources, alliances, and logistics, not by divine signs. Even after Ranni Baratheon is assassinated through shadow magic, Davos refused to betray Stannis secretly. His loyalty is not blind, but it is direct. This predictability has a cost. At Blackwater, when Stannis is defeated, Davos loses everything: his son, his position, and his influence. Later, when Stannis turns fully toward religious fanaticism, Davos finally crosses his own line and attempts to kill Melisandre openly. He fails and is imprisoned. But notice what happens next. Davos loses his position, but not his credibility. Stannis eventually restores him, not out of mercy, but because Davos remains the only advisor whose counsel is neither flattering nor deceptive. In a world full of schemers, Davos becomes illegible, and legibility is power. So far, Davos may sound merely honest, but now I would ask a sharper question. What kind of honesty survives in a political system designed to punish it? Davos' integrity is often misunderstood as moral idealism. In reality, it is restraint. He never overclaims authority. He never performs power he does not possess. He does not confuse proximity to power with entitlement. This is precisely where other outsiders fail. At this point, Davos is often compared to Ned Stark. Both are honest, both speak plainly, both refuse deception, but their integrity functions very differently. Ned Stark treats integrity as an absolute moral stance. He speaks the truth regardless of timing, audience, or consequence. His honor is inward facing. It is about being morally correct. Davos's integrity is the outward facing. He is honest, but also situationally aware. He knows when truth must be spoken immediately and when it must be delayed to remain effective. Integrity for Davos is not purity, it is discipline. This difference is why Ned Stark dies and Davos survives. Compare Davos instead to Theon Greyjoy. Theon attempts to leap from marginality to authority through a single symbolic act, the capture of Winterfell. Davos never attempts such a shortcut. He allows credibility to accumulate slowly through consistency and self-limitation. This is not humility for its own sake, it is strategic patience. Davos understands something crucial. For marginal figures, overreach is fatal. Integrity, in this sense, functions as a refuser to jump position prematurely. He survives not because he is righteous, but because he knows exactly who he is allowed to be and refuses to pretend otherwise. Integrity only matters if it holds under pressure. So let's look at where Davos draws his final lines when loyalty becomes conditional. Stannis Baratheon eventually dies. Davos does not. This matters because it reveals the true object of Davos' loyalty. Davos was not loyal to Stannis as a person. He was loyal to what Stannis once represented: legitimacy, responsibility, and rule constrained by law. When Stannis abandoned these principles, Davos does not follow him past that line. This is why Davos can later stand beside Jon Snow without contradiction. He does not switch side opportunistically. He applies the same standards. Jon Snow has moral clarity, but little political instinct. Davos sees this plainly. He does not flatter Jon. He compensates it for Jon's weakness instead of pretending they do not exist. When Davos helps broker the alliance between Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen, he does not exaggerate. He promises only what can be delivered. Integrity does not create alliances, but it makes trust possible when circumstances allow. Up to this point, Davos' strategy may sound universally applicable. It is not. Let's examine the narrow conditions under which integrity actually works. It works only under specific conditions. It requires a leader capable of recognizing uncomfortable truths. Stannis, for all his flaws, was such a leader. Under Joffrey, Davos would be executed. Under Cersei, purged. Under Robert, ignored. Even under Daenerys, he likely would not have survived long. Davos also is not unintelligent. He lacks Tyrion's brilliance, but he possesses experience, self-awareness, and judgment. These are not evenly distributed traits. One quiet moment captures Davos best. On the night before the battle against the Boltons, Davos admits that he cannot sleep. He is not heroic or confident, just aware of what failure cost. That sleeplessness is the price of responsibility. In a world full of performative confidence, Davos refused to lie to himself. And so he stays awake, not because he's a coward, but because he refused self-deception. Game of Thrones is not a moral fable. Integrity does not guarantee victory. But Davos shows us something else. Integrity, when paired with realism and restraint, can become a survival strategy. It may not make you powerful, but it can keep you intact. And in a world like Westeros or our own, that may be the rarest victory of war.